beautiful singers. This is Valerie Williams and Vocal Splendor Studios. And today I would like to talk to you about voice type part 2, which means we're going to get into the German opera Fach system. Yeah, that's a great word, Fach. It's spelled F-A-C-H and it rhymes with Bach. And yeah, there's lots of bad jokes and I think I've heard them all, but go ahead and tell them anyway because they're fun. So let me tell you about the Fach system. The Fach system began in Germany. In Germany, we have a passion for opera, and every town, every small town and large town has their own opera house, and it is part of the city government. I know this sounds crazy, but people in those places get these contracts called Fest contracts, and they are hired to sing all of the roles for that season for their voice type. And so this system of classifying voices has evolved to prevent the singers from being forced to sing a role that isn't in their best interest or doesn't fit their voice that could cause damage. So we've gone way beyond the soprano, alto, tenor, bass and created subdivisions within the soprano, alto, tenor, bass. And so I'm going to go through some of these subdivisions. And before I start, let me tell you, just because you're not an opera singer doesn't mean that this doesn't apply to you. In the opera world, yes, we are looking at specific roles that are appropriate for you based on your type. However, I have found that even in pop and musical theater and all other types, once you understand your vocal qualities, it helps you plan for your music better. And so, again, the Fach system isn't to limit you and put you in a box, but to help you identify your strengths. And because there are always people that are outside of their Fach or they're between Fachs, there's actually a term called Zwischenfach. What a great word, which is really between the Fachs. So let me go through, I actually had to print out a little list from a website to just kind of go through the basic voice types. So we're going to start with the soprano category. The highest soprano are the coloratura sopranos. They're the ones that are specialized in high notes, fast passages. So we have basically two types of coloratura sopranos. We have the lyric coloratura, which specializes in flexible, bright voice with extended top register, capable of florid passages, very high flying. The Queen of the Night, Beverly Sills, people with high voices. I sing a lot of the lyric coloratura, so that tends to be what my type is. We also have the dramatic coloratura, very similar to the lyric coloratura, but there's a little bit of weight, a little bit more sound, a little more metal, and I kind of flirt in that category too. Again, the Fach isn't really a rigid system. It's kind of where your voice lies. So those are the really super high-flying, death-defying types of singers. So now we're going to go into the rest of the soprano, the highest and the lightest voice type, and voices are like wines. We start with the lightest, and then we move down into the richer voices. Because like when you do wine tasting, you start with the light, bright wines, and then you go on to the heavy wines. Because if you start with the heavy wines, you're not going to have the flavor for the light wines. So I look at voices and wines as being really similar when we look at vocal quality. Because what we're looking at is range. We're talking about the vocal weight and the color of the voice, and that all has a lot of variations. So the next soprano Fach is the lightest and the highest is the soubrette category. And the soubrette is also a character type. A lot of times the soubrettes are the girly ones, the kind of the sassy maid, or the really young girls. And so those are the lightest voice type that are very delicate. It says here, must be a strong actress, a sweet and younger sound. So again, when it comes to Fach too, sometimes people start in that category. If you're 15, oftentimes you're going to start as soubrette, but as you grow older, you may grow and mature into these other parts, but not always. Some people are soubrette their whole life. The next level is the lyric soprano. Lyric soprano has a richer, fuller, warm sound, ability to sustain long legato lines, fewer, not as fluffy as the coloraturas, a lot of warmth in the voice. People like Renee Fleming, warm voice. A lot of sopranos are that part. It's got a lot of warmth, and we have some light lyrics to fuller lyrics, and just going to be a different texture in the voice. Okay, now we're going to get into the heavier voices of the soprano. So there's still the high voices. Now we're into the spinto. It's a steelier voice capable of cutting through large orchestras. And when it comes to opera, that's what we're talking about, is these heavier voices can sing over a heavier orchestration. As the operas became more popular, the orchestra got bigger and bigger, and the voices had to cut over that. And I find that's very similar to singers that have to sing over extended guitars and heavy metal. We've got to have a lot of cut to sing over that kind of music. So the spinto voices are also soprano, but they have more edge and more cut to their sound. Tends to be a little bit of metal in their sound, which allows them to cut through the sound. Next category for soprano, we're not done yet, is the dramatic soprano. Dramatic sopranos have a darker, rounder, fuller, oomfier sound. Many times the singers that end up singing dramatic soprano begin their musical career as an alto. They tend to have lower, middle, and strong low notes, and there's a lot of warmth and fullness in their sound. And as they mature in their singing technique, they end up getting into that soprano edge. So there's a fullness, there's an alto sound to that soprano, but they have a lot of bite and a lot of control up high. And then the very last soprano is the Wagnerian soprano. Okay, so Wagnerians are the ones with the horns on their head, you know, those guys. And these people are big people. They tend to have very large faces. They're very, very athletic. Not in the soprano category, but many football players actually have gone in to sing opera, and some of them are Wagnerians. So these are the very large people that can sing over a mammoth orchestra, lots of cut, lots of bite in their voice, the largest voice type, and often a physical size to go with it. Okay, so that's the sopranos. Now they're the biggest category because, you know, it's all about soprano and opera. Just kidding. So next we're going to talk about what we call the mezzo. Now the mezzo is a word that in the opera world we talk about altos. So we're going to put altos and mezzo. Alto is kind of an acquired term. Mezzo is a term that more opera people talk about. So the highest voice type in the mezzo category is the lyric mezzo. It's what I call the girly alto. Those are the parts that have that rich, kind of full, kind of nutty quality to their sound, but there's a lot of florid singing, there's a lightness to it. There's a lot of pop voices that we call a lyric mezzo. It's a very common voice type, rich and smooth, with a very nice legato sound. The next level mezzo we're going to talk about is the lyric coloratura mezzo. We have different approaches in this whole Fach system, but there's going to be a little more warmth, a little more roundness to the sound, more of a lyric mezzo with a fullness. Then we're going to get into what we call the dramatic mezzo. Just like the dramatic soprano, the dramatic mezzo has that steely edge to the sound. They're usually going to play the bad guys in the opera, the evil women, the witches, the horrible people, the really fun parts to play that everybody remembers. You burn people at the stake. And these are the women that have a really dark, strong, edgy sound. And typically, again, they have that nice full body type and full sound. It's really great voice. I always wish I could be a dramatic mezzo, but I don't think it's going to happen. And then also we do have in the opera world the contralto, the lowest of the voice type with the vocal range, extreme low, extreme bottom, huge rich bottom end in those voices, but with training they can go up high. All right, so those are the women. So now I'm going to get to the guys. We're going to talk about the tenor voice. The tenor is the high male voice, and we are going to categorize those guys too. The highest of all the male voices is what we call the countertenor. Now the countertenor is really a male alto, and I can talk a whole thing about the whole countertenor. There are men that actually have a very pure high voice, Michael Jackson's, John Anderson of Yes, that had that very sweet, naturally high voice. But there are also men in the opera world that train as a countertenor, which means they train their head voice. So, you know, those voice types can be interchangeable, but sometimes they're just different. There's the male alto, the tenorino, or the countertenor. So there's a slight difference in that. They are going to sing typically the high voice, and there's a whole other story about how the male voices were used when women weren't allowed in the church, and I'll get into that another time. The next step is we have the lyric comic tenor. Now that's kind of what I call the very, very high, sweet lyric tenor. I think of Adam Levine. He's not an opera singer, but I think of a voice like that. I call him the girly tenors. There's a lot of ease on top, and he even has that comedic edge, slender build, bright, silvery kind of voice. Those are those easy high tenors. Then we also have the lyric tenor. The lyric tenor collaborates kind of, or is very similar to the lyric soprano. Warm sound, kind of full bell-like sound. High voice, but not as easy top as the lyric tenor, but still a lot of warmth in the sound. They're the ones that play the heroes and the rescue the maiden type. So that would be the lyric tenor. We also have the dramatic tenor. So the dramatic tenor is again a weightier tenor. There's going to be the more edge. We can go into, again, the spinto. Again, spinto means pushed, so it has an edge to the sound. Again, some of these categories aren't really cut and dry. They're kind of, there's a variation and people have different ideas, but the voices are getting weightier and fuller. There can be a warmth in the sound or steel in the sound, and different voices have that. Sometimes we have a lot of texture in that sound. So as the voices get richer and deeper, they get into the more spinto or dramatic voice category. And usually what happens with those richer voices, they don't have the facility on the top. They can't flutter around like the lighter voices, but they have that weightier, edgier, stronger sound. And again, they typically have a different build. We're looking at someone with a fuller face, a fuller body build for those voice types. And then we have the full dramatic tenor, which is the largest voice type. And oftentimes those guys, again, began singing as baritone. They thought they had a lower voice type, and as they began to continue to sing and learn better technique, they discovered their high voice. So that would be the dramatic tenors. And so now let's go to the baritone. Baritone and bass are the lower voice types, and like the lyric mezzos, we also have the lyric baritone, which is the light baritone, the boyish baritone. They don't have the high notes of the tenor. They kind of have that middle voice. Musical theater uses the lyric baritones quite often because they want the low voice, the barytenors, but the high notes of a tenor. So, and then the boyish quality. So lyric baritones tend to have that light boyish quality. There's a lightness to them. They have like the brother kind of quality to them. And again, just like the women, some people start out as light baritones, and as they grow up, they become into the fuller voices, but not always. I never grew out into a dramatic soprano, so that's me. Also, we have the bass baritone, which is kind of more, I call them the everyman voice, kind of the mid-weight baritone, where you're playing the fathers, you're playing the kings, those type of qualities, the pirate king, those kind of guys, kind of the full voice, good strong middle. They can have a good top too, but there's going to be, again, the warmth in the sounds. We think of the lyric voice as having warmth, and the bass baritone has a bit of everything. Then as the voice gets heavier, we're going to get into the dramatic baritone or the dramatic bass, and again, there's going to have the edge in the voice. Those guys are the ones that are going to play the villains, the bad guys, the evil ones, I can't remember the bad name characters, but the bad guys are going to be those deep, evil, edgy baritones. They're going to play, the bad guys. Yeah, that's it. And then we have the very lowest bass, which is the profundo bass. Those guys sometimes will play the comedy parts. They will sometimes play the bad guys, but they have those super low bottom end, the way pedal tones basically, and those guys also have a usually specific look to them. They can be all voice types, and then we have the dramatic guys too. So again, we're looking at the range, but also the vocal quality and the vocal color, and that's kind of this, again, like wine. It's like it tastes like cinnamon or grape or whatever, or chocolate. And these are subjective terms, and even the Fach system itself there's variations at different websites in different countries. So what does this mean to you? If you don't sing opera, why should you care? Well, here's the deal, is when you understand your vocal range, your vocal quality, the vocal effects of your voice, it gives you a really clear idea of how to pick music to show that off. Knows what your basic type is and what your voice is. Now, speaking of theater, there's a whole other school of thought based on theater type. And theater type is really more about what you look like and how you present yourself than your voice. Now, sometimes they go together and sometimes they don't. But when we're talking about operatic Fach, we are talking about the vocal quality and what works best for you. And so you can kind of pick music that suits your unique vocal quality in its best light. All right. Confusing topic. I hope I shedded some light for you, and we will talk about that again. Once again, thank you for all the comments, the likes, the support, sharing my videos. I so appreciate that, and I look forward to making more videos for you next time. All right. See you next time. Bye.